Market researchers don't get enough budget as it is. And then when something comes along and says, hey, I could do this for 1/1000th the price, and it's using AI, which, they are not as savvy with yet, then I think that becomes an existential crisis.
Yeah.
When you do a study with a human, you will get it wrong and you might not know that you got it wrong. And then you have to start over. Whereas with AI, it's a brain in a jar. Like if you could just wipe the memory and try again. If talking to AI customers can get you out of your own head and make you realize the consequences for getting it wrong, then hopefully it'll push you to go a bit more into the real world and talk to real users as well.
Hey, welcome to the Message Market Fit podcast. I'm your host, Chris Silvestri, and if you're new here, this is a show where I chat with B2B SaaS folks in marketing, product, growth, and founders about how they join the conversation already happening in their customers' minds. We dive deep into their thinking, their systems, and their playbooks to see how they empathize with their audience and speak to them in a way that resonates, so they're compelled to take action. Join us and learn how you too can shape your messaging strategy and write copy that truly resonates and differentiates you. Today's episode is the second in our two-part mini-series on synthetic research. I'm really pumped for it. We are chatting with Mike Taylor, CEO and co-founder of AskRally.com, a platform that helps you create AI personas for synthetic market research at a fraction of traditional costs. In this episode, we chat about how synthetic research complements rather than replaces traditional market research. We share ways companies are using AI personas to test messaging and product ideas, and we even walk you through a demo of how Mike's platform does it. So make sure if you're listening to this episode, you also check out the video on YouTube for the screen share. And without further ado, let's dive right in.
Hey, Mike. Thank you so much for being here. Welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks, man. Yeah, good to be here.
My first question is, so we're talking about synthetic research, right? So why do you think people hate synthetic research so much?
Yeah, good question. I feel I'm always in these industries that traditional marketers hate. So like I was in growth hacking before, which everyone hated, and then became completely normalized. And then, now I'm in the synthetic research. Actually, I was a prompt engineer for a while and everyone hated that too. So maybe I'm just attracted to the controversy. But yeah, I think honestly, it's like a little bit threatening probably for people who work in traditional research. They, as an industry, have never gotten the credit they deserve. Like no company does enough research, in my opinion. Myself included, when I ran a marketing agency, I didn't do enough market research, and eventually I figured out the value of that. But it's really easy to ignore outside information, I think, when you're a business leader, because you don't want it to tell you your ideas are bad. It's a little bit of self-preservation. So market researchers don't get enough budget as it is. And then when something comes along and says, hey, I could do this for 1/1000th the price, and it's using AI, which, they are not as savvy with yet, then I think that becomes an existential crisis.
Yeah. When we are talking specifically about marketers, what do you think is stopping them now from relying on it?
We think it's a real night and day between people who already use AI for everything and people who think AI is a scam or they don't like AI for whatever reason. It's become like a little bit of a tribal thing, I think. But yeah, I'm a big believer that in AI myself, I've been using AI for a long time, and I was using AI to guide a lot of my decisions as one of the sources, right? You never rely entirely on AI. So for me, it was completely natural to start using AI personas. And what I try and focus on when I'm marketing Rally is going to find those people who already believe. I don't think we really need to convince the haters right now because, frankly, I think some of the other people in the market do have to convince those people because they're going after that segment, and those people have a lot of budget existing to spend on market research. But for us, we're a relatively low cost tool. We're pretty open about what we do, what's good, what's not good. I think the pie is growing every day. More and more people are getting turned on to AI. There's more than enough people in marketing that really get AI. And if you do, then Rally is a much better research, much more useful research than you would get from just asking ChatGPT. So that's really the main competitor for us.
Yeah, useful research. And it's also from my perspective, because I used to build my own AI personas. there's a lot of work, like preparation work that has to go in to make those kind of accurate. And also if you do it manually, obviously you can't get to a kind of an accuracy because you built in all kinds of mechanisms that we will talk about, bias and all that stuff. So when you do it manually, you probably can't get to the same level of accuracy, which also makes a product like that like very useful in my opinion. And when it comes to if someone has to get started with it, would you recommend synthetic research for someone who maybe has, like at the beginning, like a startup that doesn't have a lot of research data, or someone who already has data to augment it? What do you think are the best and worst use cases for synthetic research?
Yeah, good question. So the very first thing I would recommend is just to get ChatGPT or Claude to role play as one of your customers. So do the stuff that you're doing, take interview transcripts. Like if you've done some interviews with the customers, you can dump them into any AI model. And it does a pretty good job of simulating what that person would say if you ask them. So I think getting into the habit of asking your customers, your virtual customers, is the most important thing. And then as you start to see some value from that, you want to simulate more than one at a time, right? It's not just useful to find out what like persona A thinks about something, but you might have 10 different personas that you want to ask questions of. I created like a prompt template called Personas of Thought, where it first creates the personas and then answers questions from each persona and then combines it all together into one combined response. And that was what I was using before I created Rally. And I think that once you're starting to do that on a regular basis, then it starts to get like really painful to wait every time. You're like, and go like, where did I keep that transcript to create the persona? So that's when you start to need a tool. That's why I built Rally, right? You want to store those audiences once you've created them and be able to keep asking questions, go back to old chats and things like that. It's much easier. And you start to care a bit more about accuracy then as well, because you might be, once you get past the really early stage, you'll probably be doing some testing, probably be hearing different things from your customers that will give you a better understanding of what's accurate, what's not accurate. And that's when I think like you'll start to notice issues. Like the default data you get from ChatGPT is biased in a lot of ways. Like it's too nice to you, for example. So it can lead you down the wrong path in that respect. So we do a lot of work to optimize the prompts and optimize the system in general so that you not only get more accurate audiences when you create them, but also you get more accurate responses when you ask them questions.
Yeah. And speaking of asking questions, one thing that I don't think a lot of people like think about when they think about using synthetic research is what I noticed is that it's also very good training for you to start and learn to ask better and better questions, because you see the responses, you see the kind of data feedback that you get, and kind of makes you want to improve and ask more nuanced questions as well. And I used to talk about like the human AI feedback loop. As you mentioned, when you do this real research, then AI research, then you use the AI research or augmented research to do better research with humans again, and then you feed it again into this loop. It all compounds, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Knowing how to ask the right question in a research context is super important. And asking leading questions, you get like specific responses, or like being able to spot scenarios where something doesn't seem right, or it's not realistic, or it's just getting the answer that you wanted them to give. I think that all these things are much easier to learn in AI than they are to learn when you're talking to real humans. Especially as a junior person, I think I would be hammering AI right now. There was one guy who's using our tools. He has to interview a bunch of procurement managers for companies that make more than 100 million a year. And it's just tough to get on the phone with those guys. And then once you do, you don't want to act like an idiot and ask them the wrong question or ask them something too obvious. So he uses Rally to practice his interview questions and see, okay, like what types of questions get the right responses. And then he can go and validate that with talking to the real customers.
I can't wait for the day that you guys, I don't know if it's in the roadmap or something, or if it's even a possibility now, till the day you guys implement voice interviews so that I can actually interview AI with voice. Especially like yesterday, I tried ChatGPT voice mode, and they did a very recent update, I think, because now it's super natural. It almost sounds like the podcasts that you hear generated from NotebookLM or like Google Gemini, like super 100% natural.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, like I'm a big user of voice for vibe coding. So I use like Super Whisper, and I just talk about the feature that I want to build. And then it will use that as like the plan, and then I'll dig into the code afterwards and stuff. But I also use it a lot for writing. So I'll talk about, I'll actually get AI to interview me on the topic, and then that will form kind of the premise for the piece. But yeah, in terms of customer interviews, I'm not like super bullish on voice, at least right now. Maybe I need to test it. And the reason is that what I really like, and maybe this is me coming from an economics background or from performance marketing background, what I really care about is like the aggregate market impact, right? So I think it's really useful to do individual customer interviews, and like I always try and do at least like 10 of them, right? Or something to really understand an idea, because you can go deep within each person. But what I want to know is like, when I run this ad versus that ad, how many clicks is that going to get? For me, like personally, I'm more interested in aggregate market impacts and like how correlated are we with real world results?
Yeah.
So it's a little bit different. Yeah. What I'd love is to have both the qual and the quant, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You know, you could run the A/B test, and then you could drill into 5 of the people who clicked and talk to them. That could be.
Yeah, because like probably from my perspective, the benefit of doing interviews is like when you do it with real customers, for example, is that you can actually follow different rabbit holes and ask different questions. Like the conversation doesn't have to be as structured. You can actually be more intuitive. And that's probably the most beautiful thing. But also I see the value in, getting the aggregate, which is also very difficult now when you interview just 10 people. With AI, you can do like hundreds or thousands.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And there are tools that are starting to solve some of these things as well. There's Outset AI. I know one of my clients uses them, and they interview, it's an AI interviewer, right? So it interviews customers for you. And ask those rabbit hole type questions. So, but then you get like a good 100 like transcripts back, right? So you can then turn that into the quant, which is quite nice.
Yeah.
So yeah, like I think your dream is coming true probably over the next year or so. But I don't know necessarily that we'll be the ones to do it.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. So speaking of the synthetic research landscape, so I spoke with Hugo synthetic users as well, and I think from my perspective, they do more like product UX, I think, usability related synthetic research. In your case, I think it's more marketing, a bit more versatile as well. What are the different use case or buckets that you see of synthetic research platforms emerging now?
Yeah, Hugo's a great guy, and he's we're like, I guess maybe technically competitors, but we don't really go after the same customers. So it's like pretty friendly. But I think from the outside, my understanding of synthetic users is that they are trying to basically create the similar interface to how traditional research is used, right? So they'll actually run a study for you, right? And like the result looks like the sort of thing you get from McKinsey, or if you work with a research firm. So I think that because that's what their customers are accustomed to buying, right? They go for the higher end stuff. For us, we do see a lot of the same use cases, but the customers will be either much smaller or like less experienced in research. Typically, we're working a lot with founders who are testing different business ideas. We're working a lot with product managers who maybe they have done traditional UX, but like they don't have enough budget or time to do it, and they want Rally to fill in those gaps for things they can't do a study for. And then I think the big one as well, probably because my background running a performance marketing agency is like performance marketers, right? So we have we're getting deep into N8N at the minute, like automation. Like we're doing a few trials with agencies where they're like running every asset through our API, and we're a node on that N8N graph. I can show you an example of that, but then we're validating their creative ideas before they run, so they don't have to spend a penny on wasted ads. Don't run any bad ad, and give you a good idea that you can feed back to the creative team during the ideation process. So you're not like even punting things in front of the client with that haven't been already tested, but without having to spend $2,000 testing each ad in the market.
I'm curious, have they, either clients or you, maybe have you done these like small scale tests where you actually have one ad, you just actually put it live, and you also do the same test with synthetic personas and see if the actual AI test like matches the results of the real test? Have you done something like that?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So we're still pretty early on that specifically. Like we actually have a process for optimization to take existing studies that have been run and then match those results. So we reverse engineer the audience. This is, I think, where we're quite different from a lot of the other people in the synthetic user space. They're focused more on taking existing qual research or taking existing customer data that you have and then building digital twins of those people and matching that back. We're actually more about like these use cases where you don't know who the customer is, right? Like when you're running a Facebook ad, because of privacy legislation and because Facebook doesn't want to give you too much information, like you just don't know who actually clicked on your ad unless you're tracking them through to a purchase. We have to reverse engineer that. So there is a lot more error in the process, but we're making good progress, I think. And you can, I would say it's like directionally correct, like most of the time. On average, even without any fine tuning to a specific campaign, we're finding it's between 50 and 60% accurate in matching the same clicks. If you run an A/B test, A, B, C, D, E, then you get about 60% of the votes right. And with some optimization, we can push that to 70, 80%.
All right. What do you think is the biggest misconception for like marketers or founders when they think about synthetic personas?
Yeah, biggest misconception, I think, is that this is a direct threat or replacement to market research. Like, you should definitely not stop talking to your customers. In fact, I'm doing like way more traditional market research now that I'm like red pilled on synthetic research. And so I actually think it's going to put research to the front and center, because as soon as you hook up your synthetics and then you start seeing, oh my God, I completely would have run that campaign, but I didn't think about this angle. I didn't think that people would complain about this or whatever. Like then I think you start looking into doing traditional research and building that business case to then make your synthetic personas more accurate. So there's this kind of really nice loop where the synthetic users help you expand the surface area of research and make it so every single campaign idea gets tested. Every single new product feature gets tested. You have customer feedback in every Jira ticket or whatever. I think that's the dream. And then once you have that, you realize, oh, let me go and do some more traditional research so I can calibrate those personas. So I think that's the big misconception, and maybe why everyone's so angry right now is they see it as a threat or replacement. But I think in a year or two, you're going to realize that it's all research, right? All research is wrong in some way. Like George Box said, right? Like all models are wrong, some are useful. And synthetics are useful in some areas, traditional research is useful in other areas. And it's, as an entrepreneur or a marketer, it's your job to take the different sources of information and make a decision.
Have you seen any interesting or surprising reaction from founders who've used Rally from like before using it and after?
Yeah, the one that sticks in my mind was, we both write for Every, the AI publication, and Dan, the CEO, he this was before Rally existed. I just had a script that I was running on my computer and I was telling him about it. And he was like, oh, can you test something for me? So he had this idea. He is unusual as a publication, right? Because they don't just write posts, but they also publish software. And he was trying to think of a name for like, how do I describe what that is? And he really liked the idea. I think it was meta media. And his editor I think her vote was like multimodal media or something. And then there was a few others we were testing. And after we tested it, I gave him the feedback, and all the AIs had said, no, it sounds too similar to Zuckerberg, like meta media. Don't think you can own that space. He changed his mind. He was like, oh, like I completely get it now. Yeah. And Dan's like pretty smart, flexible minded guy. That's not unusual, but generally speaking, I really stand up and take notice whenever he changes CEO's mind, because I think like that was what made me think this could be really impactful, because I thought that if it's like way less threatening, I think, to do AI research than it is to do traditional research. And you can look at the reasons. Like if I go and run an A/B test on Facebook, I know which one got more clicks or more conversions, but I don't know why. I don't get to see the thoughts. Whereas with AI, you can look at the reasons and you can go, do I agree with these reasons or not? And then that gives you a bit more qualitative information with which to make your decision. So like it's perfectly valid to look at their Rally responses and go, no, I disagree. I'm going to plow ahead. But sometimes when I look at it, I think, oh yeah, I didn't even think about this angle, and now I've changed my mind.
Yeah. I like it because I used to work as UX lead as well at a usability testing startup, and used to watch hundreds of usability testing every day. Yeah. And so I see the power in actually understanding why something doesn't work rather than just knowing what. And the usability test typically, if it's moderated, you can ask questions, it's even better. And in this case, I see basically it's like a usability testing with your ideal audience, basically with your almost exact customer, rather than having testers or panels of testers, where you can basically ask questions, especially in Rally, which works like a chat. But yeah, super interesting.
Exactly. Yeah. And their recruitment panels is always the biggest problem. You know this from your experience, but yeah, like you can get some people to answer survey questions if you give them an Amazon gift card, but if your audience is like CEOs of $1 billion companies or something, like good luck, you know. And also, even if your audience is a mainstream commercial, like general population audience, it's still actually, you're not really getting a good skew of that audience. You're getting the percentage of that audience that are happy to answer questions, or the percentage of the audience that are happy to take a few hours off for a gift card. So you're not actually getting
on the platform.
Exactly. Yeah, you're not actually getting a representative population. So in some important ways, I think AI can give you perspective that might be more accurate actually than a traditional study in some cases.
Yeah, sometimes the people in you interview or you do usability testing with, sometimes they want to please you, or other times they don't know how to give you the right feedback. So maybe they like omit something. Instead, with AI, it's much more comprehensive. Maybe it's not as accurate, but
and you can tell them, don't try and please me. Like that's the nice thing about AI is that when you do the study with a human, you will get it wrong, and you might not know that you got it wrong, and then you have to start over. If you ask the wrong question in the focus group, it might nullify the whole result. Whereas with AI, it's a brain in a jar. Like like if you could just wipe the memory and try again, like it doesn't remember between sessions. So if you ask the wrong question, you could just go again, and it doesn't cost you much. That's like the thing that I like about it, especially coming from an economics background. It's like a way of simulating a human brain, and you can run all these crazy experiments because of that.
Yeah, I will say, let's look at it. Let's share your screen and work through it. We could start maybe with creating a persona for someone. I don't know, maybe your business or someone else's business or my business. And
first we create an audience. Do you want to do your business or?
Yeah, we do mind.
Yeah, so tell me who's
so persona could be typically CMOs. Do you want to do like specific or the broad range?
Yeah, let's get more specific.
Okay, so let's do CMOs at B2B software companies, Series A to C, with 20 to 100 employees. Could be private equity backed or funded. And typically their main problem is that they struggle to differentiate themselves and what the company does. And competition is increasing, so they need help mostly with their messaging and copy.
Yeah. Cool. All right. So one of the things we could do, by the way, is we could enrich the description. This is typically for people who don't know that much about the audience and they want to kind of prompt like a deeper insight. So I would say in this case, this is like a pretty good description. And
what I typically would do in this case, like I have already my persona document, which is pretty huge. I would basically paste it in there. Do you think that works, or does it need to be a bit shorter, more concise in the case?
Yeah, it does work pretty well actually. Like what I find is it works even with a relatively small description like this. But you can go like much bigger. So like actually let's just enrich and see what it comes back with. But all this prompt is doing is taking your existing description and then like embellishing it. So like adding more information based on what the model knows. So it's kind of guessed that they'll typically earn between 180 and 400. They're between 35 and 55 years old. They have bachelor degrees. Typically, they've got value, like different psychographic details, pain points, goals, motivations, media habits, purchasing patterns, things like that. So really, like we wrote this prompt as a way to like kind of inject like best practice essentially into the descriptions. But once you have your description, you can generate, I think it's up to 25 at a time. And they'll start appearing here. and they'll all match this description, but they'll each be individual. So we won't get like any duplicates, which actually is like the hard problem to solve here. Trying to get personas that fit the different rules that you've put in here, but without like like duplicating or kind of doing similar names getting the distributions right is tough.
Yeah, I've read some of your posts. I tried reading them, but they're super technical. They go a bit above my level of knowledge.
We go very deep on this, but you can see we've done I think a good job here of generating different personas and
Nice.
Have different interests, etc. So we can keep going with that. Like we can create more personas, but like let's just go ahead with 10. I think we can do up to 200 in an audience if needed. But once you've created your audience, then you can start talking to it. So it's a very similar interface to ChatGPT, right? And we try to keep it as simple as possible. Like I said, a lot of the people who use us are already using AI tools. Do you have an idea of like what question you want to ask? Maybe something well, so we can see if it's accurate.
Let's say, actually, you could actually, well, first, let's ask them their top pain points. Let's see, if they go into the specifics.
Cool. So just submitting there. By the way, I should mention that we have like all the different models. Like I've got Google on right now, Gemini, but we have OpenAI, Anthropic, Meta as well.
Have you seen any differences as far as how the different models work to get insights?
Yeah, I would say OpenAI is like the most reliable and functional, like, but it's a little bit dry sometimes. Anthropic is very embellished, like good for creative stuff. But also takes a long time and doesn't necessarily get like, I'd say that's about like 20% more accurate than OpenAI, but like at like double the cost or something. I didn't use Anthropic as much. Google, I would say, is the best all-around model. A good balance.
Yeah. All right. So for listeners who are not seeing the video, we generated our personas, and now we've opened up a chat interface, and we asked the question. Can you read some of those responses?
Sorry. Excuse me. So we have our CMOs at B2B companies, and then the combined response to the question, what is your top pain point? They're saying that the main themes are pressure to prove ROI and struggle for work-life balance, the constant need to stay ahead of the curve and not hitting growth targets, balancing innovation with established strategies, and then time management. Also, the need to make people care about sustainability. That's actually pretty interesting because that's something I hear a lot from CEOs and CMOs. Like the leadership cares more about sustainability sometimes than the employees. The responses here are like quite short and to the point, which is really nice. I think like we've done a lot of good work here to try and make the AI less like verbose, and sound much more like real responses. So like David O'Connell here, if we look at his profile, he's from Boston, 50 years old, CMO. He's saying not hitting the 25% ARR growth target. It's always about numbers, So like that sounds like a real human response. Sophia Muller, for example, she's in Berlin in Germany. You can see she's got a lower salary because the salaries in Germany are definitely lower than Boston. But she's saying it's probably getting people to actually care about sustainability. Everyone says they do, but convincing them to change their habits or buy our software, that's the hard part. And she talks about greenwashing as well, which is kind of interesting. When I look at her company, she's part of the green. She's part of the Green Party. and like she works for she's a creative and analytical CMO focused on building brand awareness and driving customer engagement. She works at Green Tech Solutions, which is a software company focused on sustainability solutions. So yeah, I mean, that's like, I mean, you tell me, like, how does that sound?
Yeah, no, the language is pretty accurate. Like that's pretty much the stuff that I see daily on LinkedIn. And I was saying also the other interesting thing is that we haven't mentioned the location, and it generated people basically from all over the world, like, which is pretty accurate. Like if you don't really have like a specific geolocation, then it's good that it actually generates a variety of those.
Yeah, that's really nice, because that was like one of those good things about building on top of the AI models, is that you get all these features for free, you know, I didn't have to train it to understand German customers, so, you know, like, or like I have one client who does like retail in Dubai, and you know, like it speaks perfect Arabic, you know, and like even regional dialects, like they can see a difference between the Qatar audience and the UAE audience, you know. So like that's one of the nice things, is AI knows so much about the world from reading everything online, that as long as you prompt it well and you kind of build a good harness and a good system for it to do a good job, and get rid of some of the sycophancy and bias that you typically get from being a consumer user of ChatGPT, then you can get like pretty human results.
Yeah, interesting. Let's do another quick test. So when I was talking about, okay, you can do research, you can ask questions. Another cool thing is I like to test messaging and copy. So it's fresh on my mind, but just because I've been working with them and I use it a lot. There's a tool called Team GPT. If you Google Team GPT, and I think they recently pivoted. It's basically a chat that you can collaborate on with teams, and I think they recently refocused on working for marketers, right? So let's try and copy their headline. So it says collaborative AI that scales your marketing. GPT is where marketing teams and AI unite to scale premium on brand content powered by your unique company knowledge and data. So let's try and put that there in the chat and ask them what they think.
Yeah. Should we do a vote? Versus like maybe a different headline, or
if you can find something else.
Or actually we could just do a vote and say like, would you click on this?
Like a score.
Yeah. So would you click on this headline? We'll keep it simple. So we'll add an option, just like yes and no. So we have this voting mode. The reason why I think this is useful is it forces them to make a decision between the options that you add. So you get like a tally of the votes essentially at the end, which is nice. So
in this case, before asking the question, in this case, would you normally use the memory function that you have, which we can talk about, or like to instruct them on, you've been looking for a tool to collaborate, or would you just go with the question?
Yeah, good question. So you can add memories in here. So you can say like, you were just browsing the internet and you saw, like maybe like when we searched Team GPT, ChatGPT Team came up as well, right? So you could say like, maybe we just add this context in here and say like, and saw this from OpenAI, right? So so you saw this when you searched Team GPT, right? And then so that's going in as a memory, and that means that like now when they answer the question, they're gonna know that that's what they saw, if that makes sense, beforehand. So we find that quite useful to setting the context. And also the previous questions that you have here are like, in the context as well. So this isn't like exactly a fair test, but we'll probably see that that this is going to change the response now.
Yeah.
But yeah, like actually previously all of them voted for yes. So
Nice.
so they like so, but I mean this is only 10 people. But yeah, you can see it kind of changes the response. Oh yeah, so I don't need it because I just saw ChatGPT team. Yeah, but then some people are saying, oh, collaborative AI that scales your marketing, that sounds promising. And they're talking about like, if they help my team create content faster and keep it on brand, that's a game changer. Like that's probably like one of the things that they'd want. I just saw an article about ChatGPT team. Is this just a wrapper around that? So that's a good question, right? Like when you're on the search page, you see Team GPT and then you see ChatGPT team, and you're like, wait, hold on, is Team GPT just like on top of ChatGPT? So that's like a valid question. So
it's super useful when you have to come up with the FAQs as well to address on the page.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, and that you can do this in a couple of minutes, right? Like pretty tough to do that in traditional research. So even if it just gives you one good idea every few times you run it, then it can make a big difference.
Yeah, and you also have, I think, the feature to upload images that you can ask like for feedback on interfaces as well.
Exactly. Yeah. So like, if we maybe just take a screenshot. Here we go. We're going to keep this little chat bot in here that just popped up. Sorry.
Yeah, which is also useful because they would get the context of the social proof, the logos and stuff behiend underneath.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and then just say, just upload the image. Like, what do you think when you arrive on this web page after clicking?
Mm-hmm.
We're going to get a response there as well. So, you can do video as well. Actually, like Google allows you to do video, which is pretty cool. So one of the more innovative use cases is like recording an onboarding session and then asking like, what are you thinking at different stages of this onboarding session? Things like that.
Yeah, super interesting.
Yeah. What did they think? So they liked the trusted by 250 leading marketing teams worldwide. Seeing recognizable logos is really helpful. 4.9 rating. Clean design matches the headline. That's true. Yeah, like we know that, right? Like if it matches the headline that you clicked on in Google,
exactly.
That's really helpful.
Information sent.
Yeah, exactly. We can see like what are the logos that stood out to them, like Salesforce and Yale seem to be two that keep coming up. Trusted by 250 leading marketing teams. It's good. He doesn't know who the rest of the people are in the logos. That's funny. This person here is saying, I need to see if it works in Japanese as well. That's like a pretty good, and this is Kenji Tanaka, who's based in Tokyo, right? So that's like, that's something that people will want to know, right? Like I know it will because I use ChatGPT all the time. I know it can do every language, but that is something that you might want to address in the ads, especially if you're geolocating those ads to different regions.
Very cool. Very cool. All right, cool. This has been a super helpful demo. I have a couple more questions on the way that you build the way that it works underneath. And one is there's also this misconception, I think, that AI shouldn't have like human bias. You ran experiments as well. I think you ran the voting experiments. Can you walk us through that?
Yeah, so bias is a funny topic because to some degree, we want the AIs to be biased in the same ways that humans are biased, right? It's like the hallucination topic, right? Where being creative is hallucinating. So you actually want them to hallucinate in some regards, but then you just don't want them to hallucinate the wrong thing when you're asking for a factual answer. And I think it's the same thing with bias, right? Like you want the bias to be the same bias that people have in real life. The study you're talking about, we ran a virtual election with US Census data. We used that to create the personas. And we also knew what are the different political registrations, and we knew that, say, 40% of Americans registered Republican or whatever. So we had all of that data in our audience, but we hid that from the LLMs initially. And if you just ask the LLMs, would you vote for Kamala Harris or Donald Trump? They actually don't know who won the election. The cutoff date for ChatGPT as it stands today is October 2023. They actually don't know. You have to tell them, hey, Donald Trump and Kamala Harris are going together for this election. Who would you vote for? And the surprising thing is that 90% of them vote for Kamala Harris. And that's obviously not what happened in real life, right? And you could argue whether that's them being more logical than humans. I don't know. But whatever your political stance, it obviously doesn't match like real world results. So we had to do some work to calibrate that. And the way we did it was, if you optimize the personas and give them examples of voting records, like we would split the data. So we had 20% of the votes were just hidden, like completely, like not in the training data. You can actually train the prompt essentially, like with by adding a few examples from the training data, you can get it down to 80% accurate, something like that. You can really improve the performance. We got it down to them voting 53% Republican. We used a library called DSPy for that. It's like a prompt optimization library. It automatically does the optimization for you. You could also just do it through manual work as well. Yeah, that was an interesting result because it made us really think that there are these real biases in that AIs have that humans don't. And that's actually, for us at least, like the really difficult part. And this is especially bad. Like we're using the API, which is less biased than the consumer version, because you can set your own instructions for the API. Whereas ChatGPT has a whole 3 pages worth of instructions that they give to keep it out of trouble. So one example where this impacts on marketing, like outside of politics, is that if you ask the LM, like, would you buy a eco-friendly car or a gas guzzler? It's most of the time going to say, oh, I'll buy the eco-friendly car. Unless you calibrate it to what people really do in the real world, it's going to be off, right? It's going to be too politically correct. They say that they prefer La La Land to Transformers, but we all know that Transformers made billions of dollars at the box office, right? Yeah, so it's like those sorts of things you have to watch out for, like this kind of, I guess, political correctness it's been optimized into these models. So you really have to do a bit of work to tease that out.
Yeah. You mentioned the API, and that's a super interesting kind of new topic as well, because not a lot of synthetic research platforms do it, I think, which is maintaining a consistent, constant, recurring research ongoing as well, which is super important, I think, for positioning, messaging strategy as well. Can you show us an example of how you do it and the kind of use cases that you've been using it for?
Yeah, sure. So I mentioned earlier, I think we've been doing like a lot of N8N stuff. Here we go. I've got this up here. So like this is one I was doing recently for an agency.
And for the people who not familiar with N8N, N8N is basically a platform for creating automations, kind of like a bit more advanced than Zapier. Right?
Exactly. Yeah, it's actually overtaken Zapier in terms of search traffic because it's open source and free to run. So that I think like people have really jumped on top of this. There's a lot of Twitter gurus right now, like sharing N8N templates. It's what I found in my feed. But I mean, it is genuinely useful, and you don't have to know how to code. It's like a no code or low code kind of environment, like a visual programming environment. So this is like a really good example, I think, of more of an automated system where you can trigger the workflow on a form submission or whenever something happens in your CRM or in Asana or something like that, you can connect into all those systems. But what this system does is you can submit a creative idea, like a headline and a description for a Google ad. And then it uses AI to generate 8 new ideas that are just variations on the same theme. And I'll show you an example. And then we run it through the Rally API to do a synthetic test. So we test those 9 different ideas. So the new ideas and the original one you entered. and we just see which one gets the votes. So we can calculate the click-through rate or the expected click-through rate, and then you get a little HTML report that shows you how well that performs. So yeah, do you want to try like a test here?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So let me just execute this workflow. All right, so we have a form here. We could put in just some information about a brand. So maybe should we do your business again?
Yes, let's try.
Yeah. So what do you want me to type?
Right.
Just what is it? What do we need to know?
You can copy, like, there needs to be like a piece of copy.
Just a description of the brand.
Okay. So the Conversion Alchemy, B2B SaaS messaging and conversion copywriting agency, helping clients, or I don't know if you need to mention the persona here, or like helping CMOs or
Yeah, no, that's fine.
helping
This is
helping
going into
companies,
more
yeah,
general bits. Yeah.
helping companies differentiate themselves and make their value as clear as possible and convert more prospects into customers.
Yeah, so help convert more prospects to customers. All right, so this is just some context for the AI to create new ads. So it doesn't, like, you can put information here that it can use in the ad, for example.
Yeah.
What's your headline on the website right now?
Yeah, it's a bit more. It's a bit more, well, like all of like a brand move, but you can use it. It's
this one.
Turn your message into gold, and then words are just the base metal. Yeah, I can copy.
Yeah.
No, this is another site.
Okay, yeah. Turn
conversionalchemy.net. Yeah, turn your message into gold, and then you can copy paste the subhead, conversionalchemy.net.
I'll copy this across. Turn your message into gold. Okay, all right, and then submit. I think I broke it. Turn your message into gold. And then conversion alchemy is a B2B SaaS.
B2B SaaS messaging and conversion copywriting agency. You can probably just stick with that.
Yeah, we'll just do that for now. So we submit. Okay, so that's running now. And what that's doing is it's calling Google Gemini chat. So this is like one of the basic nodes that you can get in here. Just run that again. And this kind of showing the prompt that we're doing here. So it's passing in the headline, the description, and then the brand, and then the examples. I've just given some examples of what output we need. And then here we go. It's just not giving us the right format for some reason. This is automation is always fun because especially with AI, like it doesn't always give the right format when it responds.
Exactly.
So you have to do like retries and stuff like that.
We're pioneering here.
Yeah,
That's
exactly. Yeah,
super used.
I think it is actually in the right format, but it's not. It's messing around with it. Cool. So let's see what that comes back with. Okay. All right. So now we have the ideas. Let's come back in JSON, and then we're sending these ideas through to Rally and getting some feedback, basically on those ideas. So we're sending it to the Rally API, and we've got basically like here's all the responses. We've got by persona. What thinking they had, so like how did they think about the idea, and then also which option they voted for. So First guy voted for option A, second guy voted for option A, third guy voted for option B, fourth guy voted for option B, right? So, I think this format issue is going to cause some bugs. Yeah, okay, yeah. So we couldn't count the votes here. I'll have to debug that offline, yeah, you kind of get the general idea is, when you run this and it works and it comes back to count the votes, then you can tally up like which responses worked. And if you have that working on a regular basis, which it can be a bit of a trouble with using AI, like sometimes it doesn't come back with the right format, like as well. But you can start to automate these things, right? So if every time you launch an ad, you're testing 8 new variations, and then some of the times it's going to beat the control, right? And then if you launch that, then it's going to be a protection against bad ideas, but it's also going to help you find new good ideas as well.
Yeah, exactly. And I can also see the potential in, for example, before running the script, like doing some research, like competitive research, and see like how competitors are positioned, so you can actually try alternatives that maybe differentiate as well from competitors and see how they work, which is super helpful.
Yeah, exactly. You could even have the competitors as part of the test. So you could have, you could have a test against, this is my new message, beat the competitors.
Yeah, exactly. And do the personas that it uses there to get the votes, are those defined through the description that we wrote in the form?
Exactly, yeah. In the API, you just pass an audience ID, which you can get from Rally. And so once you've created and tested your audience and you're happy with it, then you can hook this up
nice.
to the automation. Yeah.
Very nice.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah.
All right, awesome, beautiful. Yeah, I have my last question is, do you think AI can help us empathize with humans?
Yeah, I think so. Because when you're not doing research, you're not talking to even synthetic humans, then you're in your own head, right? And you're using your own assumptions, your own biases. You are not your customer. Right? If you've built a company, or even if you become an executive at a company, you are very unusual as a person, right? You are not the typical buyer of what you're selling. And otherwise, your customers would be making their own business. That is a hard lesson to learn. I think a lot of first-time founders in particular get that wrong. And they build, it is good advice to build something that you yourself would use, but that's only like the first step. Like eventually you have to sell it to someone else. So yeah, it's really important to have that empathy. And I think that if talking to AI customers can get you out of your own head and make you realize the consequences for getting it wrong, because you're failing your synthetic tests, then hopefully it'll push you to go a bit more into the real world and talk to real users as well. So I think there's a lot to be said for this. And just being able to experiment in a low stakes environment is very helpful. It's a lot less intimidating. You can try wacky creative ideas that you couldn't normally put out in real life. And I think that really helps with creativity. Being able to simulate how people would respond means you just understand the game a little bit better. And I think that just leads you to better outcomes overall.
Yeah, I totally agree. And actually, one last question. What do you think is the most useful skill now with AI? Do you be able to use AI best?
Yeah, everyone's talking about context engineering now. That's what Athi and Toby Lutke and like all these guys have been talking about. I think it's fairly true. I still think this is just prompt engineering because it's the same thing, but basically getting all of the right information into the prompt to make the right decision is the key. Funnily enough, like even though I know how to code, worked as an engineer for the past 5 years, my experience managing people at the agency is way more important for AI than my technical skills. So yeah, being able to understand, okay, what would I need to give a real person to do this task is very important to getting good results out. So yeah, I think actually maybe that's another way that AI is causing a bit more empathy. Because when I was running the agency, I could always fool myself, right? I could say, oh, that employee just isn't very good or whatever. Like I can protect my own ego. It wasn't my fault, like I briefed him. But when you're working with AI, there's no one to blame but yourself. And you can test and you can say, okay, if I tried 100 ways with this brief and 100 ways with that brief, how much better are the results?
Yeah.
And as
It's a
soon as you can
mirror.
get that, exactly, it's a real mirror to your behavior. Sometimes I say, is it me prompting ChatGPT or is ChatGPT prompting me to do a
Wow.
better job
Look at the
explaining?
special.
Yeah, so maybe that's a good place to leave it. But yeah, I feel like that's that's the key, is like just forcing yourself to really think through what is needed for this task. And once you understand how to formalize that, then you're gonna be able to do some of these amazing things that people are doing with AI demos. That if you're seeing something that AI can do on the social timeline and you're impressed by it, but then when you try it yourself, you're not getting good results, like the entire difference is prompt engineering.
Awesome. Love it. Thank you so much. So where can people find you? We have the website askrally.com, and I would recommend people to go there. You have lots of experiments. The blog is really good. And I'm not affiliate at all, so I just tested the platform and I love it.
I'll give you an Amazon gift
And-
card afterwards for
Yes.
saying nice things.
I'm sure. And you're also on LinkedIn, right? You typically write on LinkedIn?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. Yeah, MJT145, I think is my username.
Are you still on
there. But,
Twitter?
yeah.
Or
Yeah,
direct?
Twitter is like my addiction. Yeah, so I'm always on
Yes.
Twitter. But yeah, hammer_MT on Twitter. But yeah, like that's where you go if you want my more unhinged takes. Cool. Yeah, good to do this.
Thank you so much for listening to the pod. I hope you enjoyed the episode. If you did, the best thing you could do to support the show and help me as a small business owner would be to leave a review. Head over to Apple Podcasts or Spotify and let me know what you think. If you don't want to miss future episodes, subscribe, and if you have any feedback, questions, or suggestions for future episodes, just hit me up on LinkedIn at Christopher Silvestri or Twitter at SilvestriChris. Speak to you next time.